Welcome to another AutoCAD tutorial. This week we're going to, this time we're going to start on lines. Notice as you get into this document that you will require, for the completion of this, navigation and manipulation. They are prerequisites. But if you've completed those, then you should be ready to go with line. So this first panel is basically just describing the way that a line is drawn. We start with the command L, click a first point, a second point, sort of click wherever we want. If we say, I want to go back a bit, you can hit Control Z and then make your sort of precise motions. I've set it in a later panel, not this one, but if I press C and spacebar, that will close the line. So it will go back to the first point that I drew. I'll just show you that again. So pressing C, I'll go back to that point there, close off the line. Here we've got a little pop culture reference puzzle, not really a puzzle, let's connect the dots. Try and help you, I'll give you an incentive to practice drawing lines. So we're starting off at 1B, 2B, we've got 3B, 4B. All this time we're snapping to the center point. We've got object snapping turned on and snapping to the center point of these circles. I'm not going to complete this picture. I want you to do that in your own time, so that you get some experience and feel a sense of reward when you've completed the image. I've had a couple of people say that this one was a bit confusing. It's basically what I was hoping to explain in this panel was the way that we draw isometric, and that is to say that we need polar tracking on, and polar tracking needs to be set. You can right click to bring up the different menu. It needs to be set to 30-degree increments. Now if we want to draw a cube, once again I'll hide the hints layer. If we want to draw a cube here, starting from this vertical line, every one of these lines is going to be 15 units long, and they're going to be at internal and external angles of 120 degrees. So of 60 degrees in here, 120 up there, and so on. So if we're snapping to if we're stuck on the polar 30-degree tracking, we can say 15, and we can say 15 again. Just keep guiding get the dashed lines to come out where you want them, and then type 15 and hit space. Hit C to close. If we didn't have polar tracking on, you could also draw a line by saying I want 15 at an angle. I'm going to use the less than symbol. 15 at an angle of 30 degrees, and that will come up like that. And over here I'd have to say 15 at an angle of 150, I think, and that will go up there. But it's easier most of the time to use the polar tracking settings, because then it works out all the math for you and you can just describe it with the mouse. I find it easier anyway. Okay, so this panel is telling us about the properties command. As I mentioned in the previous panel, I normally keep my properties stuck up there on that side of the screen, but I'll get rid of that for now. So if you're looking at this panel afresh, you might say, I want to open the properties menu. You can use the command MO, as it says down the bottom, or you could type out properties if you forget MO. Either way, it brings it up. Grabbing the grey bar on the right, drag it against the right of the screen. I prefer to keep it there and the layers menu over here, as I mentioned previously, but there's no reason that you couldn't swap them around, or you could even use quick properties if you prefer. So that will just tell you, bits and pieces about the line as it comes up. I don't like quick properties. I prefer to either know everything or nothing about a line. But here the panel is asking us, can we find the length and the angle of rotation of this line? In properties, if we go down the bottom of geometry, the properties are broken up into different tabs as well. But at the bottom of geometry we have the length of the line, 6 significant figures, and the angle. Now the angle is not precisely 19. This is only ever displayed to an accuracy of whole unit angles. It never goes into decimal places. If we wanted to find out what the precise angle of a line was, you could use the dim angular command. This is probably getting a bit advanced for now. I'm just just showing you that it can be done. This information is stored in AutoCAD, it's just that it's not shown up there. And I'd put an angular precision of something like that, and there you go. Now I can find out this goes exactly what angle that is. But for the most part, finding out roughly what it does, or just in general knowing that that's where you can find the properties of a line, will be good. If you wanted to have a perfectly horizontal line, but you noticed that the change in the y value was something, that would mean to say if the change in the y-axis exists, then the line isn't horizontal. So I might try to have a very flat line. That one is completely flat. But if I slightly had it off skew, then I could see I've got a very small change in y here, 0.5 change in y. That's telling me that this line isn't completely horizontal. I could do something like go into the y component of this line's properties and say for the starting position where I made my first click for that line, I want this to be 7350 exactly. And this one can also be 7350. And now this line is perfectly horizontal. Yeah, so you can make changes directly in here. You can move objects and make changes in a different sort of fashion. It's up to you which way you go about editing those objects. Mostly, at least I use properties to find the area of different shapes. If I'm conducting if I want to find out how much concrete I would need to fill a certain area, then I might need to draw it. I'd get an image off a satellite photo, trace it in AutoCAD, find out what the area is, multiply that by the depth of the concrete, and now I've found out how much concrete I need, or something like that. But yeah, that's properties. A P-line is a polyline. It's a line that is made up of, in the same way as a line was made up of multiple clicks, but they were all separate. A P-line, that's with the command PL, is all one unit. So I click here, and that selects everything, whereas I click over here, and it only selects one. But I imagine now I was saying earlier that you can close a line. See if a closed polyline has an area. Yes, so now it does. Yeah, in the past, I think in 2011 AutoCAD, if you had something like this, even though it wasn't a closed polyline, it would still give you an area. Oh no, it does. It does have an area there. Maybe it only doesn't give you an area if it crosses over itself, or yeah, something like that. So if an area makes sense at all, you'll be given an area. And if an area doesn't make sense, then you're not given an area. But yeah, polylines are very useful because you can have a complicated object drawn with a polyline that you don't have to, if you want to make a change to this line, if it was made up of lots of little individual line segments, you'd have to go through and select all of the individual lines and then make changes to them in their properties. But a polyline, you can just select part of it. And if I were to make this, say, a center line or some form of dashed line, I'll just change the scale on that line so you can see it a bit better. You can see that the edges are they're making sense as polylines. See that this little part there bends and so on. Whereas if I made a similar object lines, in fact, I can probably just copy this directly to show you. I can explode a polyline to break it up into just lines, and where this one had little bends and it would turn the corner and keep going as a polyline, this one, each corner starts as a new line, so it's not as neat looking, I guess. Sometimes it can be better to, especially when having hidden lines or that sort of thing, center lines, it can be better to make sure that it's all on the one unit, otherwise it looks a bit silly. Anyway, that's a polyline. Yeah, so mentioning previously that a polyline has an area, this command talks about joining. Why have I got these things here? It's weird. This panel, talks about the join command. So I can join up all of these individual line segments down here to form one solid object, like this object is up there. But I need one polyline to join to begin with. So I'm going to start by drawing a polyline between these 2 points, making sure that I snap them together. If there's no snap points, this won't work. But after drawing that polyline in there, I can use J, the join command, to select this object and join it to all of these, making sure that I've got them all. So now when I mouse over it, I've got one solid polyline, and I can check, I want to see if the properties, if I've done this correctly, the properties should be 751.4 units squared in area. 751.44. Good stuff. Okay, I've also got splines, which are weird. They're just a curvy polyline, basically. So SPL will bring up the spline option, and like with polylines, you can have a closed spline with C, and a closed spline has an area. I think, yes, area, there it is. In general, you just use it for tracing anyway, or at least I do. But yeah, that's the spline command. Has its uses. Get rid of that ribbon. Offset. This is a very cool command. So offset enables you to copy a line at some distance away from its starting position. So bring up offset with just O for offset. And the first thing AutoCAD wants is a distance. So this panel recommends that you go through 5 units. You could go for some random number, doesn't really matter. But about 5 is how big this panel will work with. And you can see I'm clicking a line here, and then I'm specifying which side of the line I want to offset. And you'll notice that the offset command is working with regular lines, it's working with circles, it's working with something I've already offset once. I can offset again and again. And it even works with a spline, and a polyline for that matter. But yeah, all of these will work just fine. And yeah, quite a handy command. If you remember the times that you can use it, it's a good time saver, that one. This panel is showing you the way you can terrible English, the way that you can offset multiple times, and how a polyline will offset repeatedly, I guess, and will offset in a nested fashion. So you can see in the example here, I've started off with a small radius, and small radius on this curve, and after each offset, the radius gets slightly bigger and starts to eat into the other point. And we can just do the same over here. We can just keep clicking inside and inside. This little corner vanishes as we get further in. This area here can't fit 2 units inside it, so it's not going to go any better. After all that, we've got our imitated object. So again, if you have a fancy border or something, and you make it out of a polyline rather than a single line, then when you might want to make a frame, you can offset the line a couple of times to represent a frame, and you've got a nice looking no mess, no fuss border for your work, which looks really good. And lastly, in this panel, we're talking about creating a perfect square at an obscure angle using offset. So if I start offset again, when AutoCAD asks me to specify a distance, I don't have to use the keyboard. I can use the mouse and select the 2 ends of this line. Now I can offset this line over here, and this will be offset in the fashion of a perfect square. It's going to be exactly the distance. This line here is exactly the distance away from this line, as both the lines are long. And then I can join the gaps with line, and that's it. Okay, that's all for this panel. That's all for this tutorial. If you are enjoying these documents, please try the next one, and as always, if there's any feedback, let me know. I'll make changes. Thanks for watching.